Good evening. Tonight we're going to read Ezra chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 1. And when the adversaries of Yehuda and Benjamin heard that the sons of the exile were building the Hekal of Yahweh Elohim of Israel, meaning the temple of Yahweh Elohim of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel and the heads of the fathers' houses and said to them, "Let us build with you, for we seek your Elohim as you do. And we have slaughtered to him since the days of Esarhaddon, sovereign of Ashur, who brought us." As we see, they were the adversaries. And when the adversaries of Yehuda and Benjamin heard that the sons of the exile, those coming from Babylon, coming back from Babel, were building the Hekal of Yahweh Elohim of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel, who was in charge of building the temple, as we read in Sechayahu, and the heads of the fathers' houses, and said to them, "Let us build with you, for we seek your Elohim as you do." For instance, just like many claim to follow the same mighty one, yet they act as our adversaries. And we have slaughtered to him since the days of Esarhaddon, sovereign of Ashur, who brought us here. Oh, it's different. So Esarhaddon, which means, as you see, is a foreign derivation, so it's not originally Hebrew according to the concordance. The way I was saying it was thinking that it had a Zain and a Ain. But anyways, Ashur has given a brother. Ashur has given a brother. That's how they translate it. And Ashur means a step. So a step has given a brother, or also Ashur, as you guys have seen it before. You can see here that it says Ashur, the concordance. Yet here I'm writing the same, and it just says all of this, yet it doesn't mention the Assyrian Empire. But anyways, Ashur, look how, if we take these two, we have fire. I'll put them back. If we take this one, we have the bull or the ox, the one that is going to be sacrificed on Yom Kippur. The witness like Moshe, who is the consuming fire. So first, the consuming fire, now bull. If we pronounce this shur instead of shor, shor would be the ox, shur would be a wall, just like I always mentioned. The last is like a wall that protects the congregation. If we take the vav, we have zad, which is a minister, a prince. So there are several things hidden within the name Ashur. Normally, the Ashuri in the prophetical sense refers to the beast of the book of Revelation. But as we know, the beast is the opposite of the witness like Moshe. So the name Ashur has several connections. Just like we could also see this in a negative sense, of course, because this could be seen as the golden calf, Baal, whom they worship, the fire of hell, for instance. So several things, as we know, everything in this reality has a positive and a negative. But I was mentioning because of Ashur has several connections with the name Ashur. So now let me go back. So, and we have slaughtered to him since the days of Esarhaddon, which, as we saw, meant, so Esarhaddon, Ashur has given a brother, so a step has given a brother, or the reason why I went to show how Ashur connected with the last in several ways is because, as we know, the last is the brother of Mashiach, in the sense of first and last as the two brothers mentioned in the story of the prodigal son, but they can also be seen as two parts of the same person, that being Yahweh as first and last. So going back, and we have slaughtered to him since the days of Esarhaddon, sovereign of Ashur, who brought us here. But Zerubbabel and Yeshua and the rest of the heads of the fathers' houses of Israel said to them, it is not for you and for us to build a house for our Elohim, but we alone build to Yahweh of Israel, as sovereign Koresh, the sovereign of Persia, has commanded us, known as Cyrus, right? The Persian king. So look how they answer this way, because they knew, and because these people coming to say this were adversaries. So Zerubbabel and Yeshua and the rest of the heads of the fathers' houses of Israel said to them, it is not for you and for us to build a house for our Elohim, but we alone build to Yahweh Elohim of Israel. So look how it says our Elohim and then Elohim of Israel, separating themselves from those people coming claiming to be worshipers of the same mighty one. As sovereign Koresh, the sovereign of Persia, has commanded us. And it came to be that the people of the land were weakening the hands of the people of Yahudah and troubling them in their building. One thing that I wanted to mention regarding this previous chapter, as I said in Zechariah, Yahweh promised that Zerubbabel would build a temple. In fact, let's go and see it. Here in Zechariah chapter 4, you see that it says, who are you, great mountain? Speaking about the New World Order, the kingdom of the end times. In fact, I'm going to go back a little bit. This chapter has to do with the two witnesses. And we know that because in Revelation 11, the apostle Yahuchanan was told that the two prophets, the two witnesses of Revelation 11 were the two olive trees. And here we see verse 3 says, and two olive trees are by it, one at the right of the bowl and the other at its left. Then I responded and spoke to the messenger who was speaking to me, saying, what are these, my master? And the messenger who was speaking to me answered and said to me, do you not know what these are? And I said, no, my sovereign. And he answered and said to me, this is the word of Yahweh to Zerubbabel. That is a prophecy that fulfilled with Zerubbabel right here in the literal sense, and with the last in the end times, in our time. So this is a word of Yahweh to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, which is what Jewish people are expecting, surprisingly, even though it is written. They are expecting a Messiah to come and pretty much be a soldier, literal soldier, who will fight in a war and everything that would include in order to take over Israel and give everybody permission to do sacrifices, build a temple, and all of that as they expected. That's why when Mashiach came and he didn't conquer Rome in the sense that they were expecting it, they rejected him. So Yahweh promises here that he will destroy this kingdom that is being established at the moment, that will only last 3.5 years pretty much. And he's telling us that not by might or power, according to the might and power of this reality, not by might nor by power, but by my ruach, said Yahweh of hosts. So he's going to do it through his spirit, not through weapons, not through war, physical war, not through physical weapons, because our weapons are of the spirit, right? We are in a spiritual war. So we are in a war, So therefore the last is a warrior but not like they have been expecting it according to the letter. But the thing is that even when we look at the letter, we see that Yahweh is telling us clearly, which shows how thick the veil is for so many people not to be able to understand that Messiah, both first and last, would not come with physical weapons, fighting, killing people like that, as many people expect, mainly in Judaism. So not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, said Yahweh of hosts. Who are you, great mountain, before Zerubbabel? A plain. I love this. No matter how huge, how great that mountain may be, how impossible it may seem for people to pretty much be able to destroy the New World Order, the Illuminati, the power that they have seems so huge, like the giants in the land, in the promised land. When we were about to enter the land, those giants seemed huge, so much so that 10 of the spies didn't want to go in. And that's why they had to be for 40 years going around and around. So in a way, something similar happened 2,000 years ago. And that's why there had been 40 jubilees. But now it is our time, which in fact, it is part of what was prophesied in that word by Gene Staley, which we read yesterday. So we are at that time. So who are you, great mountain, before Zerubbabel? Who are you, great mountain, before Zerubbabel? Before he who was born in confusion, meaning the prodigal son. Who are you, great kingdom, New World Order, before the one who was sown in Babel? A plain. And he shall bring forth the capstone with shouts of favor, favor to it. Favor, favor to it. Miata har hagadol, who are you, Mount Great, great mountain, before Zerubbabel, a plain. We could, well, then it says, and he will take out the Eben Harosha. So the headstone, the headstone. Some call it the head cornerstone, right? Since it is headstone, they are writing capstone, as the one, for instance, on a pyramid, the one that goes on top. That shows that Zerubbabel comes to finish the work, finish the job, put the last stone on top after having placed the first 2,000 years ago. So Yahweh placed the first 2,000 years ago, the cornerstone started building, and then the last comes to put the one at the end on top, capstone, or the eben that goes on top. But this also connects with Mashiach, the cornerstone that was rejected by the builders, because even in Judaism, there's a story about how when Shlomo wanted to place a huge stone in the temple and he needed to raise it up, he wasn't able, and he didn't have the technology. So he called on a demon, the prince of the demons, and he pretty much raised the stone and put it in place. So in Judaism, that is the story that they give when explaining the verse about the cornerstone that the builders rejected, because the builders didn't want or didn't have the ability to put the stone there. So they rejected the idea of putting the stone where Shlomo wanted it or where it went. So Shlomo called a spirit, an evil entity, in order to move the stone and put it where it was supposed to be. So they said, oh, look, the stone that the builders rejected became the headstone in this case because it was on top. And that is huge because they don't know how that confirms even what Yahushua came to do, even if that was real, that was a prophetical mirror of what Mashiach would do, because he came as the cornerstone. the Pharisees, the builders said, no, that cannot be. That cannot work. No, he cannot look that like that. He cannot say those things. He cannot be. So Satan, like that demon that Shlomo called, just went and took him and put him where he was supposed to go. By killing him, he went to Sheol in order to get the keys of Sheol and death. So Satan, by killing him, put him at the top of the congregation, at the top of all authority. So Eben HaRosha can be seen as Yahushua, the stone, the cornerstone, who is the head of the body of the congregation. Remember that there are several ways in which we can see first and last. In fact, if we get really into it, remember that I had said also, well, a simple one would be the body, the outer body is the few, the congregation of the few, the 144,000. The blood are the many. The brain is Mashiach, the first. The heart is the last. Witness like Moshe, represented here by Zerubbabel. The brain has obviously two parts, and the left is connected with the heart. So pretty much, if we, like I said, get deeper into it, the right part of the brain would be the first, the left would be the last, just like first and last on right and left of Yahweh. And that is because the right is like Chokmah, wisdom. The left is Binah, which is understanding, for which it needs the heart to mix it with emotions in order to also, obviously, mainly through intellect, get to a decision or whatever the person is thinking. So the left connected with the heart, that pretty much represents the last, who has two portions. That's why two parts in the body. He's connected to the first through the left part, which is understanding, him being the heart of the congregation, like David was the heart, or had a heart like Yahweh. So my point is that both first and last can be seen as the head, because the last gives testimony of Mashiach in order to become the head of the congregation, the leader of the congregation, King of Kings, just like Mashiach came to become the Kohen Hagadol. So once they become one, both first and last, then obviously they will be both. Just like Mashiach in the beginning of Revelation, he says to the he who overcomes, I will give the morning star. At the end, Yahushua says, I am the morning star. So he gave it to the last, yet once the last becomes one with the first, that which was given to the last is also part of the first. So Eben HaRosha, that's why they write the right capstone. Teshuot, chen la. Favor to it. A little bit with this prophecy. I know this is not the chapter, but it will give a little bit more of understanding to what we are reading in this prophetical sense. So the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation. I went to here it is. And the word of Yahweh came to me saying, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. So the last comes and begins the foundation, meaning when he begins the ministry, when he starts preaching about the cornerstone, the capstone, Mashiach Yahushua, then he is laying the foundation for the temple. It will be like giving the name to the first of the 144,000. He will also give the name to the last. And it doesn't have to be personal, but Yahweh will use to bring the name through the last to the 144,000, from first to the last of those 144,000. So Yahweh is saying, he who will begin it will end it. Is not going to change. He is going to fulfill it. And also that shows something that connects with the prophecy we were discussing, because remember how we mentioned, and I went and yesterday I heard the long version where he explained it. And I actually, well, I'll mention it in the next study also, but it was interesting to see. He mentioned a couple more things that kind of confirm what we are thinking in this part of the one of the things that he also said is something that I mentioned here, was that um to him it might mean something, but to us it may mean something else or something more. And he mentioned it, so I was glad to hear from himself that well, several things that we said here, so he has the same view according to what he said. But then regarding the word itself, he mentioned a couple things that make me almost fall backwards, uh, because he mentioned that everything began. You know how he mentioned the end of the 40 years, right? And he said that we were about to enter the Yarden, and I interpret it like we have been uh, teaching it for years, that the past 2,000 years are the 40 jubilees. So we are about to enter because we're right at the end of times. Um, but he was talking about something that happened in 1982. And to me, that was huge because of the year. Um, and he was talking about the fact that, like he said, because in that year, they accepted, the Council of Churches accepted Messianic Judaism as a belief or as a religion. So before it was Christians and Jews, there was no mix. So pretty much the point in which Christianity started to go back to the roots, to the Hebrew roots, would have been 1982. So he was saying, connecting it with that year, saying that that's when pretty much something that had not happened for almost 2,000 years all of a sudden happened, because after Rome, right after the apostles, in fact, there was a separation, and there were some who became Christians or believed in the false doctrine of the apostasy, and they started to get farther and farther from the origin, which was the Yahudim. I'm not going to say Judaism because it wasn't, but the Yahudim, the true people, Israel. They started getting further and further with those teachings of Yahweh discarding the Yahudim and choosing the Gentiles and all of that they have taught. So for 2,000 years, there was a separation, a division, which was the actual point of Mashiach coming, to destroy that division, the wall that was dividing the Gentiles from the Yahudim. But the church put the dividing wall again through the apostasy, false doctrines. So it started getting farther and farther away from the roots. And in 1982, believers who had both sides were recognized as a true belief, I guess. And obviously to us, for the world to recognize something means nothing, like really. For the world to recognize something as real doesn't mean it is real. But the way he was putting it, and the fact that it happened on that year, to me, it was important. And then besides that, he mentioned, there was another thing that he mentioned. It was actually, I think, having to do with this that I was going to say. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house, and his hands shall complete it. I forgot that other part. I'm sure I'll remember in a bit. But yeah, he mentioned that year, like those, like 40 years after that moment were key. He was saying, like I said, I think it is a bigger interpretation, the 40 Jubilees, and even better. But even that interpretation of his, to me, was important. And yeah, about that, he said a couple more things regarding how important it was to him that that thing happened that year as the beginning of what would bring a lot of Christians to the roots. In fact, he himself calls himself a Christian. He uses Yeshua, not Yahushua. He uses Yahweh, which is good, but he also uses Lord, right? And God. And even though he said in the prophecy the importance of the name, when he was explaining it, he kind of said um, that the pronunciation isn't that important. So I was kind of confused. Um, but anyways, if we see it, I'll speak more about it. So verse 9, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation. So the last has to start it. That is important because many people are expecting Eliyahu to come first. But regarding the coming of the two witnesses, the witness like Moshe, who would be pretty much the second coming, the second manifestation of Yahweh on this earth, he will be first because he will lay the foundation of the house, and his hands shall complete it. He will finish it. Oh yeah, I remember what he said in the prophecy. He said that, and he was talking like in the first person. I mean, no, second person, because he was like speaking directly pretty much to everybody, but in the singular, like when Yahweh speaks to the one who overcomes, right? It's talking to the 144,000 represented by the head, the leader, the last witness like Moshe. So I feel like that's how the word was being said. And he mentioned that the will of the Almighty would be manifested through this person, yet people wouldn't be able to see that. They would think it's not the will of Yahweh, but the opposite. So the fact that here this is being said is pretty much saying that, in other words, he will start it, he will complete it, even though people will claim he's not building anything, or he won't be able to finish it, or it wasn't him who started it. And even the adversaries, as we see in Ezra 4, the adversaries will try to be part of it just to take credit. But you see how Zerubbabel makes a separation and says, no, you cannot be part. This is our job. And in fact, it's interesting that it says, but we alone build to Yahweh Elohim of Israel as sovereign Koresh, the sovereign of Persia, has commanded us. And that is important or interesting because in Isaiah 45, we read that Yahweh called this sovereign Messiah. And he said that he would build the temple. But then it is this sovereign who tells Zerubbabel, go and build it. So the sovereign of Persia gives the order because he has the authority. By giving the order, because of having the authority, is as if he had built it. Like I have mentioned, when Yahweh said, let there be light, he said it, it was done. He did it. Even if there were things in the middle making it happen that he would have created as well, like frequencies, energies, malachim, whatever. Just like when a king, like in this case, says, I want something built, he's not the one getting his hands dirty building the thing. He just said it. He gives the means, and his people go and build it. So my point is that perhaps some people would see that as a contradiction or an issue, but in fact, it is a prophetical statement, pretty much what we see in Zechariah and also in Isaiah 45, because Yahweh says that Cyrus, the king of Persia, is his Messiah. He would build the temple, the city that was destroyed. Then we see in Zechariah, Zerubbabel will lay the foundation. He will complete it. But then we see in Ezra, Zerubbabel, who is building it physically, saying that it was according to the orders of the sovereign of Persia, who received that order from Yahweh in Isaiah 45. Therefore, there is a connection between the sovereign of Persia and Zerubbabel. They both represent the same person. That's why Yahweh told both the same thing. Yet it was fulfilled in two different ways, one through authority and one physically, like he literally did the job. One, because he was from, like Zerubbabel in this case, was a Yahudi, born in confusion, so he represented perfectly the prodigal son. And this one, because this was a Gentile, and the last would be seen as a Gentile. But he would become the sovereign of sovereigns, of those who are splendid, which is the meaning of Persia. So I hope that's understood. So just to finish with this prophecy, and his hand shall complete it, and you shall know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me to you. For who has despised the day of small beginnings? Which fits perfectly, once again, with what we have been living in this reality, and in fact, even with the word that we have been discussing. For who has despised the day of small beginnings? They shall rejoice when they see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. So those who have despised this reality, those who have not been satisfied with the things of this world, and even with the little things, and I don't know, because I don't want to be, because through the apostasy, through religion, the spiritual life has been little, almost none. That's why we were tired of the apostasy and knew that there was something wrong, and we went after Yahweh, and he told us this is what's wrong, everything. So we came to despise this reality. We came to despise that which the world was offering to us. So those who have despised this, the day of small beginnings, they shall rejoice when they see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. So when they realize that the last is in the world already ready to build with the plumb line, judging, measuring, these seven, the 144,000 will rejoice. And remember the rejoicing that connects with Messiah, the word in Hebrew. These seven are the eyes of Yahweh, like the congregations, like the Malachim over the congregations, which diligently search throughout all the earth. So go back to Ezra. But Zerubbabel and Yeshua and the rest of the heads of the fathers' houses of Israel said to them, it is not for you and for us to build a house for our Elohim, but we alone build to Yahweh Elohim of Israel, as sovereign Koresh, the sovereign of Persia, has commanded us. And it came to be that the people of the land were weakening the hands of the people of Yahudah and troubling them in their building. Right? Because they will be against what we are building. They will be, because they want to build according to their own will. They want to build according to their own blueprint, instead of the blueprint that Yahweh has given us in scriptures. They want to make their own building, their own palace. So that's why they don't want to let us build. And it came to be that the people of the land were weakening the hands of the people of Yahudah and troubling them in their building. For instance, how since the thing happened with the C-19, right? And I don't want to mention names so they don't block us or anything like that. You know how they made it so that people wouldn't be able to go to congregate. And obviously a lot of those congregations are just churches filled with falsehood, but at least people were trying to find spirituality. Some were actually trying to find the Almighty. But Then they placed a false law in the whole world that people couldn't gather. Literally, you cannot gather because you might kill everybody. And scripture says that you should not stop gathering. So the world said that so that people would not fulfill what Yahweh wants. And obviously, there are other reasons why, like not talk to each other about what we should do about the government, what we should do not to let them take over our liberties and all of that. Because many revolutions started in places where people gathered, like congregations, even bars, places like that. So they don't want people talking to each other. They don't want people sharing love. They don't want people sharing energy, like a hug, which is so powerful. So when it comes to the fact that the scripture says that we should not um, stop congregating with our brethren and learning scriptures, the fact that they made us not do so, like, and well, we still do it, right? I never stopped really. Perhaps I gave it like a week, but but I mean the world. So they tell the world not to gather, that they might kill somebody, that they might die. So people are all afraid. I even saw it was amazing, in a online newspaper. There was one story about a person who got well, there was two stories, but one, a person that got a mail from his boss telling him that everybody in that job needed to put a mask on when they did a Zoom meeting, because there was one of the people that was afraid of seeing people without masks, and he wanted to make everybody feel good. So it's amazing, and they go ahead and do it. I mean, it's amazing. Then another one of a kid in kindergarten who was drawing masks on every kid on every magazine because he felt weird of seeing kids without masks, to see smiles. And that is sad. Imagine how much fear those parents are putting in those children. And there are other ones, like there was another one of a, yeah, well, he was pretty old already, so I'm guessing that's part of the fear that he had. But he was a professor in university, so we would think that he was smart, right? And he still had all his abilities, and I mean all in the sense that he gray hair and some wrinkles and everything. I'm pretty sure that's why he was so fearful, although he shouldn't be, but he was. And he was in a Zoom meeting using a, what they called a space helmet, and inside of that helmet, a mask in front of the computer. And the students were asking him to please go to school because they wanted to have lessons in person. And he insulted them so bad that he was asked to leave from the job, because he insulted them, telling them that they wanted to kill him, that they were trying to kill him with the COVID. It's amazing, amazing. So going back to one of the reasons why they did that, other than the injection, which is the main one, was not to allow people to gather, because they know how important it is for society to socialize, right? So if they don't let people gather, a bunch of people won't be able to find the truth or understand it when they hear it, and all of those things that gathering with your brethren works for. So by doing that, they are weakening the hands. And like I mentioned, Zerubbabel would lay the foundations. But then what did they do? They started weakening the hands. So that means they know that something's happening. They know that it is starting. So they don't want people gathering. They don't want people healthy. and a bunch of other things. And it came to be that the people of the land were weakening the hands of the people of Yahudah and troubling them in their building, just like they troubled the people not to gather, because it is no longer a building, a temple. The temple is the congregation. The people are the temple. So they don't let us build. That means they don't let us gather. Just like you would put a stone on top of another stone and then another stone, you're gathering those stones to make a building. So the congregation is the temple, which they are not allowing us to build because they don't want us to gather. Yet Yahweh is building it, of course, and hiring counselors against them to thwart their plans all the days of Koresh, sovereign of Persia, even until the reign of Darius or Darius, sovereign of Persia. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the inhabitants of Yahudah and Jerusalem. Look how they did so much that they pretty much stopped the plans from the days of the first king to the reign of Darius, right? So a long time. In fact, we see that there were 95 years from the moment when Koresh or Cyrus gave the order to build, from the moment when we read in Nehemiah that he was told that he could go and build and finally was able, from Artaxerxes. 95 years from the first decree to the fourth decree, which was the actual one that was fulfilled 483 years before Mashiach came to the world. So just like, once again, like in the apostasy, they made false doctrines to stop what Yahweh came to do through Mashiach, the cornerstone. So now we are in the end times, and Yahweh sent Zerubbabel to build it like he promised in Zechariah. But we see, once again, also seeing it in our time, how they are hindering us from gathering, which is pretty much building. And in that case, nice how it says here, and hiring counselors against them to thwart their plans all the days of Koresh, sovereign of Persia, even until the reign of that Yahweh, sovereign of Persia. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, which is the one that we see in the book of Esther, who married Esther, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the inhabitants of Yahudah and Jerusalem. And in the days of Artaxerxes, Bishlam, Mithredat, Tabeel, and the rest of their companions wrote to Artaxerxes, sovereign of Persia. So you see how it went from Koresh, Darius, Ahasuerus, and now Artaxerxes, known also as Artaxerxes. So in the days of Artaxerxes, Bishlam, Mithredat, Tabeel, and the rest of their companions wrote to Artaxerxes, sovereign of Persia, and the letter was written in Aramaic and translated from Aramaic. That's verse 7. Reading in Aramite. So it was written in Aramaic, which shows, well, what we also saw in another study, how coming back from the exile in Babylon, half of the people were speaking Aramaic, half of the people. And that represents how the many are within the nations. Remember that the nations were created when the languages were confused. So the people of Yahweh were scattered across the four corners of the earth and have been there for hundreds of years. So they speak the languages in which they are living. And they even think, most of the people, that they are not the people of Yahweh. They think they are Gentiles. And that's why the many will come from all the corners of the earth. Many of them will be from Israel. Many others won't, but many of those who will be from Israel right now don't know they are Israel, sadly. And even if we tell them, they will laugh at us because they think that it is us trying to take that position, not really looking into history or the true identity of those who claim to be and all of that. So we see these people sending a letter in Aramaic, connecting them with the nations, connecting them with confusion, connecting them with the many. And in the days of Artaxerxes, Bishlam, Mithredat, Tabeel, and the rest of their companions. In this case, let me see these names real quick. Bishlam, Mithredat, and Tabeel. Remember also, interesting, there are three people. Well, they had a bunch of others in front of them, but the scripture only mentions three of them because they represent, once again, it seems, the many. Remember, the many are represented by the number 3. The few are represented by the number 1. So here, 3 people are being mentioned. Bishlam, which means in shalom. Beshalom, we could read this Beshalom. Bishlam, so in shalom, or son of shalom, ben shalom. So here it says that it is a contraction of ben shalom, son of peace. Obviously, that's a positive meaning. And we read how the last comes to bring shalom. Yahushua brought the spiritual shalom that surpasses all understanding. The last brings shalom to the whole world. So he will be the prince of peace, the son of shalom. Mitradat means given by Mitra. We already saw the last time about this entity, commonly known as Mer, is the Zoroastrian divinity of covenant, light, and oath. Remember that? So in the positive, it would represent he who comes to confirm the covenant. Yahushua is the light. He made the covenant through his blood. The last comes to be a judge. The first is the truth, who died for the many. The last comes on the harvest. The first is the water of life. So we see the things that they give this entity or attribute to this false God or whatever are things that belong only to Yahushua and the last. So obviously, if we take it as being the false Elohim, then it's negative. But in the positive, it would be representing given by the Most High, who is first and last. And lastly, Tabeel, pretty much Tov is El. The Almighty is good, or good is the Almighty would be in the correct order. So as we will see when we read the names, those 3 names can connect with the last, because in Shalom, let me look at the names here. In Shalom, he who was given by the Mighty One will be the good of the Mighty One, the goodness of the Mighty One. Remember, Yahushua was called Tov, and he said, why do you call me Tov? Referring to the fact that only Yahweh can be called Tov, and because Yahweh is the one who manifests as the last in the end times to show what it is his good, his true goodness, unlike what this world calls good, which is actually evil. So, and in the days of Artaxerxes, Bishlam, Mithredat, Tabeel, and the rest of their companions wrote to Artaxerxes, the sovereign of Persia, and the letter was written in Aramaic and translated from Aramaic. Rehum, the governor, and Shimshai, the scribe, wrote a letter against Jerusalem to sovereign Artaxerxes. So we see that they were against the building, which is amazing because they were part of the people. And it's so sad to see, and it is so common in Israel and many of the nations in which we have been born and, well, our ancestors were brought here and we've been here forever. Well, not forever, for a long time. And I say that because, well, when I don't know how to put it, because I guess I am in a different country than most of you guys. And actually, in the country where you are, there's a lot of support for many of the things that, for instance, when I was young, I wanted to go to the United States and live there because, as everybody knows, we were taught around the world that there was an American dream and that you could achieve anything there, whatever, right? And it became a nightmare for sure. But one thing that is true is that there was, at least still is, but for the wrong reasons, but there was a lot of support for anything that you would want to do. You would find a way to do it. In the country where I'm at and others like it, no matter what you want to do, those around you will try to bring you down. And it is the weirdest thing in the world, and it's so normal. So that's why I wanted to mention that regarding this verse, because it is sad, but it's so common for people to want to bring others down when they see them doing something with their lives, doing something for really for the world. They don't want that. They want everything to be in disorder. They want everything to be destroyed. They want everything, uh like, since they don't want to move ahead, they don't want anybody to move. Like, for instance, with the injection, since people are afraid of the truth, are afraid of, uh afraid of that disease, afraid of death and all of that, they go and get the injection because they are told that that's what is going to save them. But when they realize you don't have the injection, you don't have that fear that they have, then they get angry at you, because through your lack of fear, you reveal their bunch of fear. So they don't want that. So they want everybody to be in the same boat, because if the boat will sink, it will sink with everybody on it. And it is sinking already, right? So the same thing we see here. Rehum, the governor, and Shimshai, the scribe, wrote a letter against Jerusalem to sovereign Artaxerxes. Thus, Rehum, the governor, and Shimshai, the scribe. Rehum, the governor, and Shimshai, the scribe. In a way, like doing a contrast with Zerubbabel and Yeshua. They were pretty much placing themselves in the spot that actually belongs to Zerubbabel, who's called the governor in Zechariah. And as we know, Yeshua was the priest. Rehum the governor and Shimshai the scribe and the rest of their companions, the judges and the emissaries, the consuls, the officials, the people of Erech and of Babel and of Shushan, the Dehawites, the Elamites, and the rest of the nations whom the great and noble Osnaper took into exile and settled in the cities of Shomron and the rest beyond the river. And now this is a copy of the letter that they sent him to sovereign Artaxerxes from your servants, the men beyond the river. We'll see the names in a bit, but here it says the people of Erech and of Babel. I think this is important. So let me go to Genesis. When we read about Nimrod, and Cush brought forth Nimrod, he began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter against Yahweh. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter against Yahweh. And the beginning of his reign was Babel. Look, in the beginning of his reign was Babel and Erech. So Nimrod began his reign in Babel and Erech. And now we see here the people of Erech and Babel confirming that they were in confusion, represented by the Aramaic language which they used to write the letter in. So they wrote the letter in Aramaic, representing the fact that they were in confusion, like the nations of the world at the moment. Even if they are of Israel, they are as Gentiles, and those who claim to be Israelites are not. So also one thing that we see here is that after the 10 tribes were exiled by Sennacherib, the king of Ashur, he started something that the other kings after him followed, which was to, after they conquer a nation, they would put everybody in another land so that they would lose their connection with the land, their roots, and then nobody would know where they were from, in the sense that after many 100 years, like nowadays, for instance, that we are in this continent and people believe to be part of whatever country they're in, not knowing that they were brought there hundreds of years ago. So that also is part of the confusion, changing everybody's land make the confusion of the nations even greater. So we see here these people who are representing those who are in falsehood. That's why they write in Aramaic, and that is confirmed by the fact that they say the people of Erech and Babel, meaning the place where Nimrod started. The people of confusion, which is the meaning of Babel. Then in Shushan, which is the city mentioned in Esther, the Dehawites and the Elamites and the rest of the nations whom the great noble Osnaper took into exile and settled in the cities of Shomron, and the rest beyond the river. And now we're reading Ezra 4. In the fourth book of Ezra, we read about those exiles that were taken to this continent way before Mashiach came. So there were Israelites in America way before Mashiach came, according to Ezra. And we see, well, part of it here by saying of Shomron and the rest beyond the river. Beyond the river represents, well, obviously, like we know the Euphrates as the main river mentioned, the one that Abraham passed in order to become the Hebrew, he who passes, who crosses from the other side. Also, we could say the Yarden, which is the border of Israel that the people have to cross in order to enter the promised land. And also the great amount of water that there is between the east and the west, meaning Israel and America. So, and now this is a copy of the letter that they sent him to sovereign Artaxerxes from your servants, the men beyond the river. And now, beyond the river, let me see that for a moment, verse 11. Oh, well, remember that it was written in Aramaic. So, and now let it be known to the sovereign that the Yahudim who came up from you have come to us at Jerusalem and are building the rebellious and evil city. And are building the rebellious and evil city. They were the rebellious against the Most High. They were the evil people. Those who were building got the permission from Artaxerxes himself. but they were coming from Babylon, so they were seen as evil, yet those who were evil were in Israel thinking they were great. Hope that's understood. Those who were coming from Babel, Zerubbabel, Yeshua, had the authority to build coming from the king. So they went to Jerusalem and started or tried to start building. Yet those who were there thinking they were the owners sent letters to stop the building. So those who were in Israel were acting as non-Israelites. Those who were coming from Babel were seen as non-Israelites in the sense that there was division, there was enmity. So let it be known to the sovereign that the Yahudim who came up from you have come to us at Jerusalem and are building the rebellious and evil city and are completing its walls and repairing the foundations. Now let it now be known to the sovereign that if the city is built and the walls completed, they are not going to pay tax, exercise, or toll, and cause the revenue of the sovereign to suffer loss. These people. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about these people. There's so many like them, and what do they care if that was the case? And if that was the case, the king knew. They're just trying to put tares in the middle of the wheat, right? They're trying to put evil thoughts in the king's head so that he may stop them. Just like when Satan goes to Yahweh and tells him, this person is doing this and that, you should not let him do it. This person is doing this and that, you should kill him. Or you should allow me to bring disease to show you that he doesn't love you like he says or like you think, right? Everything that Satan does is bringing accusation, looking for Yahweh to allow him to destroy us. This is what these people were doing, acting like Satan. And look, there were three of them, like Samael, Lucifer, and Azazel, Bishlam, Mithridat, and Tabeel. So, like I said, they were acting like Satan. They were being influenced by Satan, without a doubt. Many people are influenced by Satan and they don't realize it, which is amazing. They think that it is the Almighty doing it. It is the Almighty putting those feelings. They think, like scripture says, that the day would come when people would kill one of those who believe in Yahweh, thinking that they are doing it for Yahweh, thinking that they are doing his will. They will do completely the opposite. So these people, like Satan, are looking to make the king change his thought regarding Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, Yeshua, in the building of the city. And what do they talk about in order to try to achieve that? Money. Because in this world, they love money. So since money is all to them, and as we know, Satan is God, according to Isaiah 65, and God means fortune in Hebrew. So they worship fortune, they worship God. So they think that the king worships God also. So they say, if you allow them to do that, you won't be able to worship God anymore. They won't give honor to God. They won't give taxes. They won't give this and that. Is that clear? And I hope if anybody's listening and it's the first time that made sense. Isaiah 65 says that God is the name of the entity that is over or in charge of fortune in this world. So the Yahudim, and well, just because it is important, I'll go and see it. Isaiah 65, verse 11. But you are those who forsake Yahweh, who forget my set apart mountain, who prepare a table for God, who prepare a table for God, and who fill a drink offering for many. God is fortune, many is destiny. Verse 11, where we see the name God, as the one they worship. Those who are in confusion in Babel, those who worship money, worship God. That's why the doctrine of prosperity. It says here, the Lamed is to God, to God. And see, it doesn't have a letter in the middle, so it doesn't have a vowel. And I say that because some people might see this and say, oh no, but it is with the A. And they will claim that they worship the one with an O. But when they pronounce it, they say exactly the same thing. When they say it with their mouths, the spirit that comes out is the same one. The pronunciation is the same one. So the spirit coming out of the mouth to invoke this entity is the same one. And like I said, in Hebrew, there are no vowels. So it's both, with an O, with an A. And even more if you pronounce it the same. So God is another name for Satan. As you guys know, in Spanish, the same thing happens, even though it's a different name. In Spanish, they say Dios, and that comes from Zeus, who is also Satan according to Revelation. So he has worked on every language for sure, because confusion came from Babel, where the languages were changed. So this is like people who worship money getting mad at those who don't worship money, getting mad at those who are not, you know how they think that they are workaholics, but they don't work for Yahweh. They work for the system. They work for a certain company. They work for themselves. They just want to make money. So they become workaholics. So that's some type of worship of money, of course. So if they see that you are not interested in making tons of money, that you're not interested in having the car of the year and to have the mansion that everybody wants, and of course, if Yahweh gives it to you, well, Yahweh be praised. But if that is a blessing, because it can become a curse depending on the person, depending on the desires, the weaknesses, and all of that. A blessing could become a curse. It all depends on the one who receives it. So, as I was saying, those people who love money and worship God for money, and it's all they think about, and they go to church to hopefully get more money by putting it in the church. They think there is going to come at the account, at the bank account, and all that. When they see a person that is not interested in that, is just interested in revelation, in knowledge, in wisdom, they say that you are not ambitious enough. They say that you are, well, they have all the titles because you are pretty much a mirror that shows that they are not doing what they are supposed to in life. For the soul, of course, because they don't understand it consciously, physically. So the same thing with the injection that I was saying. That's why they hate us. So now let it now be known to the sovereign that if this city is built and the walls completed, they are not going to pay tax. First of all, how do they know? And second, like I said, if they don't, the king would know because he was the one who gave them permission. And the fact that they wouldn't, because the treasure is for Yahweh, the one that would be in the temple. The fact that they wouldn't shows that they wouldn't worship money. So they wouldn't use it in the sense that the people of the world would use it and expect to receive payment. So people of the world who actually hate taxes are here saying they won't pay you taxes. We pay you taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes. But when in this case shows how much evil was in their heart, right? It's like a neighbor calling the government, IRS, yo, the neighbor, I know he told you he bought this car, he bought another one. You should tell him, right? I was seeing in the, I was seeing that from the website of the IRS, I actually saw it today, that they ask people, it's part of their law, to report if you have stolen anything. If you have stolen goods, you have to report them unless you return them the same year. But if you're planning on keeping them, you got to report them according to the prices of that thing that year. It was amazing. And then they mentioned, talking about the person that steals, they use the word self-employed. If you are self-employed and you steal, you have to report what you stole. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it, and it was true. But anyways, and as you guys know, the IRS even it isn't legal really. So they are stealing. That's why they dare to tell people, if you are also stealing, report it. Don't steal from us. It is amazing. So as I was saying, they are not going to pay tax, exercise, or toll, and cause the revenue of the sovereign to suffer loss. So the way they try to convince him is, you're going to lose money. It is not a good business to work with them. They are not focused on money, so they won't make you money. So you shouldn't work with them. Bad business. That's how people in the world think. So that's why they were using that strategy to speak to the king. Now, because we have eaten salt from the palace, it was not fitting for us to see the sovereign's shame. Therefore, we have sent and informed the sovereign, so that search be made in the book of the records of your fathers, and you find in the book of the records and know that this city is a rebellious city and causing loss to sovereigns and provinces. And revolt was stirred up in it since days of old, for which cause this city was destroyed. For which cause this city was destroyed. The city was destroyed because the king of Babel entered and destroyed it. The city was allowed to be destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar because the people were sinful, because they were worshiping not Yahweh, because they were not celebrating the Shemitah, they were not allowing the land to rest. But they say, and revolt was stirred up in it since days of old, for which cause this city was destroyed. So they're telling him, go and read the records of your ancestors. They will tell you how bad these people are, but they're not talking about the people, because they are part of the people and they are living there. They're talking about the city, as if the city could be evil by itself, right? So, and revolt was stirred up in it since days of old, for which cause this city was destroyed. Well, is in Aramaic, but here says about how they ate salt. And then, according to what I understand from here, when it mentions shame, it refers to seeing him naked. Then verse 14. We have maintenance from the king's palace. Now, because we have maintenance from the king's palace, and it was not meet for us to see the king's dishonor, therefore have we sent and certified the king. The two words there, melach, which is salt, eat salt, which makes a person thirsty. And then it says, well, nakedness, as you see, arva. Here, this is salt. Remember that back in the day, well, referring to what I was saying earlier before, I say that the fact that it is written that way, literally, they ate salt. I wouldn't think they ate it by itself, right? So it has a spiritual connotation. One of those, the fact that, like I said, when you eat salt, something that is salty, you will get thirsty. and you will need water. Mashiach is the water of life. They clearly did not have the water of life, for they were trying to stop the temple, which is the body of Mashiach, the water of life, from being built. But other than that, in the sense of what is being said here, let me read it again. The literal says, this is a copy, no, 14. Now, because we have insult from the palace, remember that back in the day, salt was not only used for eating, it was also used as payment. That's why the word salary comes from salt, the first three letters. So they were getting paid from the palace, from the king. So that's why they told him, you will suffer loss money-wise. And since we get paid from you, we don't want you to lose any money, because if you lose, we lose, pretty much what they are saying. They get food from the palace. And that's why it is not fitting for the sovereign to be naked, as when a person goes poor and doesn't have something to cover with, and is ashamed of it. So that's pretty much the reason why they said this. Now, because we have eaten salt from the palace, it was not fitting for us to see the sovereign's shame. Therefore, we have sent and informed the sovereign, so that search be made in the book of the records of your fathers, and you find in the book of the records, and know that this city is a rebellious city, and causing loss to sovereigns and provinces. And revolt was stirred up in it since days of old, for which cause this city was destroyed. We informed the sovereign that if this city is rebuilt and its walls are completed, then you have no portion beyond the river. He was the one who gave the order, and the people who were building it were loyal, were the best of the people. Yet here, the worst of the people are claiming to be the best, and that's why they are informing the king about what they would think about these other people that were building. Just like when people in general project on others that which they are, or what they think, what they would do, they think others would do. So when they see something that could be interpreted in any way, mainly bad, that's how they will interpret it, and mainly according to what they would do. So we see here these people talking bad about Zerubbabel, Yeshua, and the rest, trying to bring them down, trying to stop the building of the city, which connects, once again, I repeat, with Satan wanting to stop the new Jerusalem from coming down from heaven. We inform the sovereign that if this city is rebuilt and its walls are completed, then you have no portion beyond the river. You will lose your authority. You will lose the land that you had over here. The sovereign sent a message to Rehum the governor and Shimshai the scribe, to the rest of their companions who dwell in Shomron, the Samaritans. Those Israelites who were taken there, the 10 tribes, and who got mixed with falsehood and even other nations. That's why they were seen by the Yahudim in the time of Mashiach as dogs, as animals, sadly. And that's very common in that false doctrine. So to the rest of their companions who dwell in Shomron and the rest beyond the river, Shalom. And now, the letter you sent to us has been plainly read before me, and I made the decree, and a search has been made, and it was found that this city in days of old has lifted up itself against sovereigns, and that rebellion and revolt have been made in it. Right? For instance, well, that had not happened by this time, but we know what happened with the Maccabees and the Greek emperor, the revolt that happened was because the emperor was imposing things that he shouldn't. He was being completely evil. In fact, he was the representation of the beast of Revelation. So there was a revolt, yeah, but because it was necessary, because of the evil of the authority. So in the past, that also happened, but also as well, sadly, there were rebellious people. Reason why Yahweh took us out of the land. So, and mighty sovereigns have been over Jerusalem, who have ruled over all beyond the river, and tax, excise, and toll were paid to them. Now, make a decree to make these men cease, and that this city be not built until the command is given by me. So, well, you see in the book, Ezra right here, Nehemiah right there afterwards, right? We read it backwards. So that's why in Nehemiah, we read about Artaxerxes giving the decree for Nehemiah to go and build, and he was able to build the wall and finish it. But here we are before that, and Artaxerxes is stopping the building. So it says, now make a decree to make these men cease, and that this city be not built until the command is given by me. And beware of negligence to do this. Why should damage increase to the hurt of the sovereigns? Why should damage increase to the hurt of the sovereigns? Now, when the copy of the letter of sovereign Artaxerxes was read before Rehum and Shimshai the scribe and their companions, they went up in a hurry to Jerusalem against the Yahudim and made them cease by might and power. Look at that. Remember how we just read it? By might and power is how they, the evil ones, made them seize the building, seize from building the temple. Zechariah 4 regarding Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my Ruach, said Yahweh of hosts. That's how Yahweh will do it through the last. But the world, they do it by might and power. What do? They try to make us stop. So Satan is an obstacle. That's why he makes people stop from going to the Father. How? Using might and power, physical things of this world. Yet Yahweh, not by might nor by power, but by Ruach. And the Ruach is invisible, represented by air, by wind. So it is invisible. That's why he's going to do it in an invisible way. People won't realize it. People won't see it coming, happening, nothing. They won't realize because, like Yahweh said, he comes like a thief in the night. So in this case, against the Yahudim and made them cease by might and power. Then the work of the house of Elah, which is at Jerusalem, ceased. And it ceased until the second year of the reign of Dariawesh, sovereign of Persia. Until the second year, like the 2 years of the C19, right? And now we're in the 22, the second of the 20s. So let's hope that has a like implication with our time, right? So then the work of the house of Elah, which is at Jerusalem, ceased, and it ceased until the second year of the reign of Dariawesh, which means sovereign itself, sovereign of Persia. That's how that chapter ends.